From discarded Omega to the force that shook the valley, the Saraphina Vale story. They said she was useless. They said she stole. They left her to die in a blizzard. But what Saraphina Vale built on that mountain shook the entire wolf world, not with strength, but with something no one saw coming: bread. When the most powerful alpha in the territory tracked her down, when wolves started climbing the mountain every night, when her old alpha returned with 30 warriors, everything changed. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your city below. The wind cut like broken glass. Saraphina Vale stood at the edge of Ironclaw territory, with blood freezing on her split lip and her ribs screaming with every breath she dragged into her lungs. Behind her, the pack house blazed with firelight and voices, laughter mostly. They were celebrating her exile. Move, Omega. The voice belonged to Marcus Thorne, the Alpha's enforcer. 6'4" of muscle and contempt, standing close enough that she could smell the whiskey on his breath. His hand was still red from where he'd backhanded her 20 minutes ago in front of the entire pack. Saraphina didn't look at him. She looked past him, past the fire, to where Alpha Garrick Thorne stood on the pack house steps with his arms crossed and his face carved from stone. 60 years old and hard as the mountains themselves. He'd been Alpha for 37 years. He'd exiled 12 wolves in that time. She was about to be the 13th. I didn't steal anything, she said. Her voice came out steady. That surprised her. Marcus laughed, sharp, ugly. You hear that? She's still lying. The stores were counted yesterday, Garrick called out. His voice carried like a whip crack. Today we're short 3 pounds of dried venison, half a wheel of cheese, and a jar of honey. You were on kitchen duty, alone. I portioned everything correctly. Shut your mouth. Marcus shoved her. Not hard enough to knock her down. He wanted her standing for this. You think we're stupid? You think we don't know what you are? What she was. Omega. The lowest. 15 years old and so far down the pack hierarchy that she didn't even have a rank number. Just Omega. The one who cleaned, who cooked, who kept her head down and her mouth shut until today. Search my room, Saraphina said. You won't find anything. Already did. That was Lydia Crow, the pack's head female. She stood beside Garrick with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Found this under your mattress. She held up a small cloth bundle. Saraphina's stomach dropped. That's not... Open it, Lydia, Garrick said. Lydia unwrapped the cloth with theatrical slowness. Ensilade, dried meat, cheese, a small jar of honey. The pack erupted. Shouts, jeers, accusations flying like stones. I've never seen that before in my life, Saraphina said. Her heart was hammering so hard she thought her ribs might crack. Someone put that there. Someone planted... Enough! Garrick descended the steps. The crowd parted. He stopped 3 feet from Saraphina and looked down at her with eyes like chips of flint. You're weak. You're slow. You can barely shift. The only thing you were good for was kitchen work, and now you steal from your own pack, from wolves who fed you, sheltered you. I didn't... You're done talking. His voice dropped to something quieter, colder. My father taught me that a pack is only as strong as its weakest member. And you, Saraphina Vale, are a rot at the heart of Ironclaw, so I'm cutting you out. Silence. Total, suffocating silence. Saraphina's wolf stirred inside her chest, small, weak, pathetic compared to the others, but awake, listening. You're exiling me. I'm giving you a choice, Garrick said. Challenge me for Alpha and die in the circle, or walk into rogue territory and take your chances with the storm. The storm. Saraphina looked up. The sky was the color of old bruises, heavy with snow that hadn't started falling yet, but would. Soon. The temperature was already dropping. She could see her breath misting in the air. Rogue territory was 20 miles of wilderness controlled by no pack. Wolves who went in alone didn't come out. Some choice, she said. Garrick smiled. It was the cruelest thing she'd ever seen. Life's full of hard choices, girl. Choose. She looked at the circle of faces. Pack members she'd grown up with. Wolves she'd cooked for, cleaned for, served for 15 years. Not one of them met her eyes. Not one. Except one. Thomas Vale stood at the back of the crowd. 32 years old, her father's younger brother, the only family she had left. He looked at her with something that might have been pity or might have been relief that it wasn't him standing where she stood. He didn't say a word. "I'll walk," Saraphina said. Marcus grinned. "Smart girl. But I want my father's pack." The grin vanished. "What?" "My father's pack," Saraphina repeated. She was shaking now from cold, from fear, from rage. "Jonathan Vale. He carried a leather pack for 20 years. It's mine by right. I want it." Garrick studied her. "Why?" "Because it's mine." For a long moment, Garrick said nothing. Then he nodded to Marcus. "Get it." Marcus disappeared into the pack house, returned 2 minutes later with a battered leather pack, its straps worn soft from years of use. He threw it at Saraphina's feet. She picked it up, slung it over her shoulders. The weight was familiar, comforting. Her father had died 3 years ago in a border skirmish with the Night Fang pack. This pack had been his constant companion, carried on hunts, on patrols, on the long winter scouts through the mountains. Inside would be the things he'd taught her to value: flint and steel, a small knife, rope, a compact bedroll. Not much, but something. "Anything else?" Garrick asked. His tone said there better not be. Saraphina looked at him, really looked, saw the way his jaw was set, the way his shoulders were tight. He wanted her gone, needed her gone. This wasn't about theft. This was about something else. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Because you're weak." "No." She cut him off. The pack stirred, uneasy. "You didn't interrupt the alpha." "Why now? What changed?" Garrick's eyes went flat. "Marcus, escort her to the border." Marcus grabbed her arm, hard enough to bruise. Saraphina didn't resist. She let herself be walked through the crowd, past the pack house, toward the tree line where Ironclaw territory ended and the wild began. The pack followed. Not all of them, but enough. They wanted to watch. At the border, marked by a line of stones stacked chest high, Marcus stopped. Shoved Saraphina forward. She stumbled, caught herself. "You cross that line, you're dead to us," Marcus said. "You don't come back. You don't ask for help. You don't even speak the name Ironclaw. Understand?" Saraphina turned, looked at the faces one more time. Uncle Thomas stood at the back, his face unreadable. Lydia Crow stood beside Garrick, her smile sharp as knives. And Garrick himself stood with his arms crossed, waiting. "I understand," Saraphina said. She stepped over the line. The cold hit her immediately. Wind that had been blocked by the pack house now tearing straight through her thin jacket and the threadbare shirt beneath. She had no coat, no gloves, no hat, just the clothes on her back and her father's pack. Behind her, someone laughed. Saraphina didn't look back. She walked into the trees as the first snowflakes started to fall. The storm hit an hour later. Saraphina had made it maybe 3 miles. Not far. Not nearly far enough. The snow came down in sheets, thick and blinding, erasing the world 10 feet in every direction. The temperature plummeted. Her fingers went numb. Her face burned with cold. She kept walking. Her father's voice echoed in her head, rough, steady, real, even though he'd been dead for 3 years. "Stop when you can't see. Find shelter. Fire first. Always fire first." But there was no shelter, just trees and snow and darkness pressing in from all sides. Her foot caught on something, a root, a rock. She didn't know. She went down hard, her palms slamming into frozen ground that felt like concrete. Pain exploded up her wrists. She bit down on a scream. "Get up!" She got up, kept walking. Her wolf was whimpering inside her chest. Small, frightened, useless. Most wolves could shift by age 12, 13 at the latest. Saraphina had managed her first shift at 14, and it had been pathetic. A scrawny thing, weak and slow. She'd shifted maybe a dozen times since. It hurt. It always hurt. But right now, she needed that fur, that insulation. She stopped, closed her eyes, reached for the shift. Her wolf recoiled. "Please," Saraphina thought, "please, I need you." Pain ripped through her spine, bones grinding, muscles tearing. She fell to her knees, gasping, and felt her body start to change, and then snap back. The shift failed. She was left human, shaking, blood on her tongue where she'd bitten through her lip. Tears froze on her cheeks. I'm gonna die out here. The thought was clear, clinical, probably true. She'd heard the stories. Omega exiled in winter, found 3 days later frozen solid against a tree. Beta, who challenged the wrong alpha, driven into the wild, never seen again. The mountains didn't care about pack politics. They just killed you. But something in her, some stubborn, furious part that sounded like her father, refused to lie down. You're not dead yet, girl, so move. Seraphina moved. She didn't know how long she walked. Time became meaningless. There was only cold and snow and the burning in her lungs. Her legs were shaking. Her vision kept blurring. She was so tired. Just a little rest. Just a minute. No. You sit down, you die. She didn't sit. And then, through the snow, through the dark, she saw it. A shadow. Darker than the rest. A break in the tree line. Seraphina stumbled toward it. Her boots crunched through ice-crusted snow. The shadow resolved into an opening. A cave mouth, low and narrow, half hidden behind a fallen tree. She dropped to her knees and crawled inside. The wind cut off immediately. The silence was deafening. Seraphina lay on the cave floor and shook so hard her teeth rattled. She couldn't feel her hands, couldn't feel her feet. She was going to lose fingers, toes, maybe more. Fire. You need fire. Her father's pack. She dragged it off her shoulders with numb, clumsy hands, fumbled with the buckles, got it open. Inside, exactly where it should be, flint and steel wrapped in oilcloth. A small bundle of tinder, dry moss, birch bark shavings. Her father had prepared this pack like his life might depend on it someday. Now hers did. Seraphina's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the flint. She struck it once, twice. Sparks flew but died in the cold air. Again. Again. On the 7th try, a spark caught. The tinder smoked. She bent close, breathing gently, coaxing. The smoke turned to a tiny flame. She fed it bark, then small twigs she found scattered near the cave entrance. The flame grew. Light bloomed in the darkness. Heat, blessed, beautiful heat, radiated from the small fire. Seraphina sat back and started to cry. Big, ugly, gasping sobs that came from somewhere deep in her chest. She cried for her father, for her mother, who'd died giving birth to her, for Uncle Thomas, who'd watched her exile and said nothing, for 15 years of being Omega, of being nothing. She cried until she had nothing left. Then she wiped her face, fed more wood to the fire, and looked around. The cave was bigger than she'd thought. The entrance was narrow, maybe 3 feet wide, but it opened into a space roughly 12 feet across and 20 feet deep. The ceiling was low, barely high enough to stand upright in the center, but the floor was relatively flat. Limestone walls, dry. No animal smell. No scat. Abandoned. Seraphina pulled off her boots. Her socks were soaked through. She wrung them out, hung them near the fire. Checked her toes. Red, painful, but she could still feel them. That was good. Frostbite hadn't set in yet. She pulled her father's bedroll from the pack, compact, military grade, designed for mountain winters, unrolled it near the fire, and crawled inside. The shivers slowly subsided. The fire crackled. Outside, the storm screamed. Seraphina closed her eyes. You made it to shelter, that's day 1. Tomorrow, you figure out day 2. Tomorrow. The word felt impossible, but she'd made it this far. She woke to silence. The fire had burned down to coals. Gray light filtered through the cave entrance. The storm had passed. Seraphina sat up, every muscle in her body screaming. She felt like she'd been beaten with rocks. Her ribs throbbed where Marcus had shoved her. Her lip was swollen. Her hands ached, but she was alive. She fed the coals, brought the fire back to life, and took inventory. Her father's pack contained flint and steel, a knife with a 4-inch blade, 50 feet of thin rope, the bedroll, a small metal cup, a fire-blackened pot, dented but functional, and at the very bottom, wrapped in wax cloth, 3 strips of dried meat and a small bag of salt. That was it. That was everything she had in the world. Seraphina sat back on her heels and laughed. It came out bitter, half crazy. Okay, she said out loud. Her voice echoed strangely in the cave. Okay. What now? Her wolf stirred. Hungry. Right. Food. She pulled on her boots, still damp but warmer than going barefoot, grabbed the knife, stepped outside. The world had been remade in white. Snow lay 3 feet deep in places, pristine and blinding in the morning sun. The trees were skeletal against a sky so blue it hurt to look at. No wind, no sound except her breathing. Beautiful, deadly. Saraphina oriented herself. The cave mouth faced roughly east. Behind her, the mountain sloped upward into rocky terrain. In front, the forest stretched down into the valley, miles and miles of territory that belonged to no pack. Somewhere out there were rogues, lone wolves, outcasts, exiles like her. Some were harmless. Most weren't. She couldn't think about that now. Food, water, warmth, the basics. Water first. She scooped clean snow into her father's pot, brought it inside, set it near the fire to melt. While she waited, she checked the cave more carefully. The limestone walls were pocked with small holes and crevices. The floor sloped gently toward the back, and there, in the far corner, water seeped from a crack in the rock. Not much. A slow trickle that pooled in a natural depression before disappearing into the ground. A spring. Saraphina knelt beside it, cupped her hands, and drank. The water was ice cold, mineral sharp, but clean, fresh. "Thank you," she whispered to the mountain, to her father, to whatever god or force had led her here. The pot was melting snow into water. She drank that too, then refilled it and set it aside. Her stomach was cramping with hunger, but she ignored it. The dried meat needed to last. She had no idea how long she'd be here. She spent the rest of the morning gathering firewood, dead branches from beneath the snow, dried pine, anything that would burn. It was exhausting work. Her muscles were weak from lack of food, from cold, from the beating her body had taken, but she kept at it. By midday, she had enough wood stacked inside the cave to last 3 days, maybe 4 if she was careful. That's when she heard it. Voices. Saraphina froze, listened. Men's voices, rough, low, coming from the north. Rogues. She slipped back into the cave, grabbed her knife, positioned herself behind the entrance where the shadows were deepest. The voices got closer. "Telling you, I smelled smoke." So, could be anything. In this weather? This deep in no man's land? It's a fire, which means someone's here. Then let's find him. Footsteps crunching through snow. Saraphina's heart was pounding so hard she thought they'd hear it. She gripped the knife. It felt small, useless. A shadow fell across the cave entrance. A man ducked his head inside. 40-something, scarred face, eyes that adjusted quickly to the dim interior. He saw her immediately. "Well, well," he said, smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "What do we have here?" Saraphina raised the knife. "Get out!" The man laughed. "You hear that, Cade? She's got a knife." Another man appeared behind him, younger, leaner, with a hungry look in his eyes. "She's just a kid. She's a wolf. I can smell it." The first man, the one with the scars, took a step inside. "What pack are you?" "None of your business." "Wrong answer, sweetheart. See, out here, we're all rogues, and rogues don't have pack protection. So you're going to tell me what you're doing in our territory, or—" "Your territory?" Saraphina cut him off. Her voice was shaking, but she held the knife steady. "This is no man's land. It doesn't belong to anyone. It belongs to whoever's strong enough to hold it." The scarred man took another step. "And you? You're not strong. You're barely standing." He was right. She knew he was right. But she also knew that if she showed weakness now, she was dead. "I'm not leaving," she said. The man studied her. Then he nodded slowly. "Okay. Then we'll take the cave. And you." His smile widened. "You can cook for us. Clean. Earn your keep." Cade laughed. "She's Omega. I can smell it on her." Omega. The word hung in the air like poison. Saraphina's wolf snarled inside her chest. Small, weak, pathetic, but furious. "I said no." The scarred man moved fast. Faster than she expected. He lunged, grabbed her wrist, twisted. The knife clattered to the stone floor. His other hand closed around her throat. "You don't get to say no, Omega." Saraphina couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Black spots danced across her vision. Her wolf surged. The shift came fast and brutal, bone and muscle tearing, reforming. She dropped, twisted, and her teeth found flesh. The man screamed. Saraphina, now wolf, tore into his forearm with everything she had. Blood filled her mouth, hot and copper sharp. The man staggered back, cursing. Cade lunged forward. Saraphina dodged, but she was too slow. His fist caught her in the ribs, the same ribs Marcus had damaged yesterday. Pain exploded through her chest. She yelped, stumbled. "Stupid bitch!" The scarred man was bleeding badly, his arm hanging useless, but he was smiling. "Hold her." Cade grabbed her by the scruff. She snapped at him, caught nothing but air. The scarred man pulled a knife from his belt, longer than hers, sharper. "Should have just said yes, sweetheart." He raised the knife. A howl split the air. Not Saraphina, not the rogues. Something else. Something massive. The temperature in the cave dropped 10 degrees. The scarred man froze. "What the hell?" A shadow filled the cave entrance. No, not a shadow. A wolf, 8 feet long from nose to tail, jet black fur, eyes like molten gold. Alpha. The scent hit Saraphina like a physical force, power, authority, strength that made her wolf want to roll over and expose her throat. The massive black wolf growled. The sound was so low it vibrated in Saraphina's bones. Cade dropped her. "Oh shit! Oh shit! Run!" the scarred man shouted. They ran. The black wolf watched them go. Didn't pursue. Just stood there, massive and silent, blocking the entrance. Then it turned those gold eyes on Saraphina. She was still shifted, small, scrawny, blood on her muzzle. She should have been terrified, should have submitted immediately. Instead, her wolf did something strange. It sat. The black wolf tilted its head. Saraphina shifted back to human. The change hurt. It always hurt. But she gritted her teeth through it, ended up naked, shivering, on the cave floor. The black wolf shifted too. The man who stood before her was maybe 30 years old. Tall, broad-shouldered, with black hair and those same unsettling gold eyes. He wore dark pants and boots. No shirt, despite the cold. He looked at her for a long moment. "You're hurt," he said. His voice was deep, quiet. "I'm fine." "You're bleeding." Saraphina looked down. Blood was seeping through her shirt where her ribs had been damaged. More blood on her lip. She probably looked half dead. "I said I'm fine." The man's expression didn't change. "Those rogues will be back, with more. Then I'll deal with them. With a 4-inch knife and a fire? If I have to." He almost smiled. Almost. "You're either very brave or very stupid." Maybe both. This time he did smile. It transformed his face completely, made him look younger, less dangerous. "I'm Kyle," he said. "Kyle Draven." Draven. Saraphina knew that name. Draven Pack controlled territory 70 miles south. They were powerful, respected, and their alpha was, "You're alpha," she said. "I am." "What are you doing here?" Kyle looked at her with those gold eyes. "I caught a scent," he said quietly. 3 days ago. Bread. Fresh bread. In the middle of a winter storm. Impossible. But I followed it anyway." Seraphina's stomach dropped. "I haven't baked bread in weeks." "I know." He took a step closer. "But I can smell it on you. In your skin. In your wolf. It's part of you." This was insane. She'd never heard of anything like this. "I don't understand," she said. "Neither do I." Kyle crouched down to her level. "But I know what you are. Omega. Exiled, judging by the way you're living in a cave with nothing. And I know those rogues will come back to kill you. So what? You're here to save me. I'm here to offer you a choice." Seraphina laughed bitterly. "I've heard that before." "This is different." Kyle's expression was serious. "Come with me. Join Draven Pack. I'll protect you, feed you, give you a place." "In exchange for what?" "Nothing." "Bullshit." Kyle smiled again. "Smart. Okay. In exchange for letting me figure out why your scent is driving me insane, why I can't stop thinking about you, why every instinct I have is screaming that you're—" He stopped, shook his head. "I don't know, but But I want to find out. Seraphina stared at him. This was crazy. This was all crazy. But she was freezing, bleeding, and alone in a cave with no food and no plan. What if I say no? She asked. Kyle stood. Then I'll leave. But I'll also tell you that those rogues, they run in packs of 12 to 15, and they don't like witnesses. He turned toward the entrance. Wait, Seraphina said. Kyle paused. She looked at her father's pack, at the small fire, at the cave that had saved her life. And she made a decision. I'm not joining your pack, she said. Kyle turned back. No? No, but I'll make you a deal. Seraphina stood, wrapping the bedroll around her shoulders like a cloak. You help me survive. Bring me supplies. Protect me from the rogues. And in return? She looked him in the eye. I'll cook for you. Kyle blinked. What? You said you smelled bread. You want to know why? I'll show you, but it's going to be on my terms, in my space. I'm not joining your pack. I'm not submitting. I'm staying right here. Kyle studied her for a long moment. Then he started laughing, deep, genuine laughter that echoed off the cave walls. You're serious, he said. Completely. You're Omega. You're hurt. You have nothing, and you're negotiating with an alpha. That's right. Kyle shook his head, still smiling. What's your name? Saraphina Vale. Saraphina Vale, he repeated, tasted the name. You're absolutely insane. Is that a yes? Kyle looked at her, really looked, and something shifted in his expression, something deeper, older. His wolf recognizing hers. It's a yes, he said quietly. Seraphina's heart was pounding. She'd just made a deal with an alpha, a powerful alpha who could crush her with one hand, but she'd done it on her own terms. I'll need flour, she said, yeast, salt, a better pot, and I'll bring supplies tomorrow, Kyle interrupted. Tonight I'm staying here. Those rogues won't come back if they smell me. I don't need... Seraphina. Kyle's voice was gentle but firm. Let me do this. She wanted to argue, wanted to prove she didn't need help, but she was so tired, so cold, so hungry. Okay, she whispered. Kyle nodded, shifted back into his massive black wolf and positioned himself at the cave entrance, a living barrier between her and the world. Seraphina crawled back into her bedroll and stared at the fire. What had she just done? What had she just started? Outside, the night deepened, the temperature dropped, and somewhere in the valley below, wolves howled at the moon. Seraphina closed her eyes and tried not to think about tomorrow. But tomorrow came anyway. Tours. Kyle left at dawn. I'll be back before dark, he'd said, shifting to human just long enough to speak. Don't open the entrance to anyone but me. Then he was gone, a black shadow disappearing into the trees. Seraphina sat in the silence and tried to process what had happened. An alpha had offered her protection, had stayed the night, had promised to bring supplies. None of it made sense, but her stomach was cramping with hunger and sense was a luxury she couldn't afford. She ate half a strip of dried meat, rationing it carefully, drank water from the spring, fed the fire. And then, because she couldn't just sit there, she started exploring. The cave was deeper than she'd thought. Past the main chamber, a narrow passage led further into the mountain. She took a burning branch from the fire and squeezed through. The passage opened into a second chamber, smaller than the first, maybe 8 feet across, with a ceiling high enough to stand. The walls were smooth limestone and... Seraphina stopped breathing. On the far wall, someone had carved symbols. Old symbols, worn smooth by time. She didn't recognize them, but they felt significant, important. Below the symbols, the floor had been shaped. Not naturally, deliberately. A shallow depression, perfectly circular, about 3 feet wide. An altar? A hearth? Seraphina set the torch in a crack in the wall and knelt beside the depression. Ran her fingers over the smooth stone. It was warm. That didn't make sense. The cave should be freezing back here. But the stone was warm to the touch, and when she held her hand above the depression, she could feel heat rising. A hot spring? Geothermal vent? She didn't know, but it gave her an idea. If there was heat here, natural, consistent heat, she could build something. Not just a fire, something better. An oven. The thought came fully formed. insane, but possible. Seraphina's mother had been a baker. That's what Uncle Thomas had told her, one night when he'd had too much whiskey. Before she died, before Seraphina was born, her mother had run the pack's kitchen, had baked bread that kept the pack strong through hard winters. Seraphina had inherited none of that skill. She knew how to cook basic meals, how to preserve meat, how to make stew that wouldn't kill anyone. But baking? Baking was an art. And art required tools, ingredients, knowledge. But standing there in that second chamber, feeling the warmth rising from the stone, Seraphina felt something she hadn't felt in years. Possibility. She spent the rest of the day gathering stones. Flat ones from the stream she found half a mile downslope. Round ones from the mountainside. She hauled them back to the cave, load after load, until her arms shook and her back screamed. By the time Kyle returned at dusk, she had a pile of stones stacked in the main chamber and a plan forming in her head. Kyle shifted to human as he entered, carrying a large pack. He looked at the stones. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Building an oven." Kyle set down the pack. "An oven?" "Yes." "In a cave?" "Yes." He stared at her, then at the stones, then back at her. "You're serious," he said. "Completely." Kyle ran a hand through his hair, laughed quietly. "I brought flour, yeast, salt, everything you asked for, and you're building an oven. I can't bake bread without an oven. Most wolves don't bake bread at all." Seraphina looked at him. "I'm not most wolves." Something flickered in Kyle's eyes. Recognition, respect. "No," he said quietly. "You're not." He helped her carry stones to the second chamber, helped her stack them around the warm depression, building up the walls slowly, carefully. It took hours. By the time they finished, both of them were exhausted. The structure was crude, a dome of stacked stones with a small opening at the front. But the heat rising from the depression radiated through the stone, warming the entire chamber. Seraphina touched the stones. "Hot. Very hot." "It'll work," she said. Kyle looked at her. "You really think you can bake in that?" "I know I can." She didn't know. She had no idea if this would work, but she couldn't show doubt. Not now. Kyle reached into the pack he'd brought, pulled out a cloth sack of flour, another of salt, a small jar of yeast, dried herbs, a better pot, a bowl, even a wooden spoon. "Where did you get all this?" Seraphina asked. "I have my ways." "You stole from your pack." Kyle smiled. "I'm alpha. I don't steal. I requisition." Despite everything, Seraphina almost laughed. That night, they sat by the fire, and Kyle watched her mix flour, water, salt, and a pinch of yeast. Her hands moved automatically, following patterns she half remembered from watching the pack kitchen. The dough came together slowly, rough at first, then smooth as she needed. "My mother used to do this," she said quietly, "before I was born. Uncle Thomas told me she could bake bread that made wolves stronger, faster. He said it was like magic." "Was it?" Kyle asked. "I don't know. I never knew her." She shaped the dough into a round loaf, covered it with cloth, set it near the fire to rise. "Now we wait," she said. They waited. Kyle didn't leave that night. He stayed at the entrance again, wolf form, watching the darkness. Seraphina lay in her bedroll and stared at the cave ceiling. This was insane. All of it. But for the first time since her exile, she didn't feel hopeless. She felt something else. She felt awake. The bread baked at dawn. Seraphina shaped the risen dough carefully, slid it into the makeshift oven, and waited. The smell started 20 minutes later. Warm, rich, yeasty. It filled the cave, spilled out into the cold morning air. Kyle, in human form now, lifted his head. "That's bread," Seraphina said. But it wasn't just bread. She could feel it. Something in the baking process, the heat, the stone, the cave itself, was changing it, amplifying it. When she pulled the loaf out an hour later, it was perfect. Golden crust, soft interior, steam rising. Kyle stared. Seraphina broke off a piece, handed it to him. He ate it slowly. His eyes widened. "What?" He stopped, looked at her. "What is this?" "Bread. This isn't normal bread. I can feel it in my chest. My wolf is..." He broke off again, shaking his head. It's like pure energy. Seraphina took a piece for herself, tasted it. Her wolf surged, not painfully, joyfully, like it had been sleeping and suddenly woke. The bread was doing exactly what her mother's bread used to do. It was making them stronger. How? Kyle asked. Seraphina looked at her hands, at the bread, at the oven. I don't know, she said honestly, but I think this is what I'm supposed to do. Kyle was quiet for a long time. Then he stood. I need to go, he said. But I'll be back tomorrow. And Seraphina? Yes? Don't give this to anyone else. Not yet. Not until we understand what it is. She nodded. Kyle shifted and disappeared into the forest. Seraphina sat alone with the bread and felt the weight of what she'd just created. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was something else entirely. And deep in the valley, wolves would soon catch the scent and wonder what had changed in the mountains. What was coming? What had already begun? 3 weeks. That's how long Seraphina had been baking. 3 weeks of waking before dawn to knead dough. 3 weeks of coaxing fire from the stone oven she'd built. 3 weeks of bread that came out perfect every single time. Golden, fragrant, impossible. And 3 weeks of Kyle Draven showing up at her cave like clockwork. He brought supplies, flour, salt, yeast, better tools, a proper Dutch oven made of cast iron, wool blankets, a coat that actually fit. He never asked for anything in return except to watch her bake and to eat the bread when it was done. But Seraphina could feel the tension building, could see it in the way his eyes tracked her movements, the way his wolf surfaced when she handed him warm bread, gold bleeding into his irises. Something was shifting between them. Something dangerous. She was kneading dough when he arrived on the 22nd day. You're late, she said without looking up. Kyle ducked through the cave entrance, shaking snow from his hair. I brought something different today. What? He set down his pack and pulled out a small burlap sack. Honey, real honey, not the processed stuff, and dried cherries. Seraphina's hands stilled in the dough. Where did you get those? Does it matter? Yes. Kyle met her eyes. I traded for them. With what? Your bread. The words hung in the air like smoke. Seraphina's stomach dropped. You what? Relax. I didn't tell anyone where it came from. I just said I had a source. One of my border patrol wolves was injured, torn shoulder, infection setting in. I gave him a piece of your bread, and he healed in 2 days instead of 2 weeks. Word spread. Now half my pack wants to know where I'm getting it. And what did you tell them? Kyle smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Nothing, because it's not their business. It's my bread, Kyle. You can't just... I brought you supplies, he cut her off. His voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath. Expensive supplies. Protected you from rogues. Spent 3 weeks making sure you didn't freeze to death in this cave. I think I've earned the right to share what you make. Seraphina stood. That's not the deal. The deal was you'd cook for me. You are. For you. Not your entire pack. Kyle took a step closer. What difference does it make? The difference is control. Seraphina's voice was shaking now. I decide who gets this. I decide how it's used, not you. You're Omega, Seraphina. You don't decide anything. The words were a slap. Seraphina's wolf snarled inside her chest. Get out! Kyle didn't move. What? I said get out. Take your supplies and leave. You're serious. Completely. Kyle stared at her. Then he laughed, low, incredulous. You're throwing me out? You'd be dead without me. Maybe. But I'm not dead. I'm standing here, and this is my cave, my oven, my bread. So get the hell out. For a long moment, Kyle said nothing, just looked at her with those gold eyes that saw too much. Then he shifted. The massive black wolf filled the cave entrance. Power radiated from him in waves, alpha dominance that made Seraphina's knees weak. Her wolf wanted to submit, wanted to roll over and expose her throat. She didn't. She met his eyes and held her ground. Kyle's wolf growled. The sound vibrated in her bones. Seraphina growled back. It came out pathetic compared to his, a small, weak sound. But it was hers. Kyle shifted back to human. You've got guts, I'll give you that. I've got more than that. Do you? Kyle stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. Because from where I'm standing, you've got nothing. No pack, no family, no protection except what I give you. So maybe you should think very carefully about who you're picking fights with. Seraphina's heart was pounding. Is that a threat? It's a fact. Then here's another fact. She looked up at him. You need me more than I need you, because whatever's in this bread, it's not something you can replicate. It's not something you can steal. It's mine. So if you want it to continue, you'll respect my terms. Kyle's jaw tightened. And if I don't? Then you can leave and never come back. See how long your injured wolves take to heal without it. Silence. Total, suffocating silence. Then Kyle smiled. Slow, dangerous. You know what you are? He said quietly. What? The most infuriating wolf I've ever met. Despite everything, despite the tension crackling between them like lightning, Saraphina almost laughed. Good, she said. Kyle shook his head. Fine. Your terms. But I want something in return. What? Teach me. Saraphina blinked. What? Teach me how to bake. How you do what you do. I want to understand it. Why? Kyle was quiet for a moment. Because I've been alive for 30 years and I've never seen anything like this. Never felt anything like this. And I need to know if it's the bread or if it's you. The last 3 words hit Saraphina like a physical blow. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. It's the bread, she said finally. Is it? He was too close, way too close. She could see the flecks of darker gold in his eyes, could smell him, pine and winter, and something deeper, wilder. Kyle, I can't stop thinking about you, he said. His voice was low, rough. I wake up and the first thing I think about is getting here, seeing you. And I don't know if it's because you're making something impossible or because my wolf has decided you're... He stopped, bit off the word. Seraphina knew what word. Mate. I'm not your mate, she said. I didn't say you were. But you were thinking it. Kyle's expression was unreadable. What if I was? Seraphina stepped back, put distance between them. Then you'd be wrong. Omegas don't mate with alphas. That's not how it works. It is if the bond is real. There's no bond. You're just... She searched for words. You're confused. The bread is doing something to your instincts, making you think, I know what I feel. You don't know anything about me. I know you were exiled for theft you didn't commit. I know you survived 3 weeks in a cave with nothing. I know you built an oven from rocks and memory and somehow created something that shouldn't exist. Kyle's voice softened. I know you're scared and alone and the strongest wolf I've ever met. Seraphina's throat was tight. Stop. Why? Because I can't. The words caught. I can't afford to believe you. Kyle looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Okay, he said. Then I'll prove it. How? By showing up every day until you do believe me. He picked up his pack, pulled out the honey and dried cherries, set them on the cave floor. These are yours, he said. Do what you want with them. I won't touch your bread again without permission. Then he shifted and was gone. Seraphina stood alone in the cave and tried to stop shaking. What the hell had just happened? She didn't sleep that night, couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Kyle's face, heard his voice. I know what I feel. No. He didn't. He couldn't. Mate bonds were rare, sacred. They happened maybe once in 100 pairings, and never, never between Omega and Alpha. The power imbalance was too great, the instincts too incompatible, but her wolf kept whispering otherwise, kept remembering the way Kyle's scent had wrapped around her, the way her chest had tightened when he'd said he couldn't stop thinking about her. No, Seraphina said out loud. Absolutely not. Her wolf didn't listen. At dawn, she threw herself into baking, mixed honey into the dough, added dried cherries, shaped the loaves with angry, precise movements. The bread that came out of the oven was beautiful, sweet, perfect. She ate a piece and felt her wolf surge with approval. Then she wrapped the remaining loaves in cloth and did something crazy. She walked down the mountain, not far. just to the edge of the valley where the forest opened into farmland. There was a stream there. She'd seen it from higher up. And where there was water, there were usually wolves. She found 3 of them, 2 males and a female, thin and wary, huddled around a pathetic fire. They looked up as Saraphina approached and immediately went tense. "Easy," Saraphina said. She held up the wrapped bread. "I'm not here to fight." The female, maybe 20, with matted brown hair and suspicious eyes, stood. "What do you want?" "To trade." "Trade what?" Saraphina unwrapped the cloth. The smell of warm bread hit the air. All 3 wolves froze. "Is that—" The female's voice cracked. "How do you have bread?" "I made it, and I'm offering it to you in exchange for information." The larger male moved forward. "What kind of information?" "About the packs around here, territories, politics. Who runs what?" The 3 wolves exchanged glances. "Why?" the female asked. "Because I'm new here, and I need to know the landscape." The smaller male, barely 18, gaunt with hunger, licked his lips. "How much bread?" "1 loaf, split 3 ways, if you tell me what I need to know." They agreed so fast it was almost pathetic. Saraphina sat with them around their fire and listened as they talked. Learned that Ironclaw controlled the northern mountains. Draven held the southern forests. Between them were a dozen smaller packs, Nightfang, Silvercrest, Ashwood, all jockeying for position. Rogue territory was everything unclaimed, dangerous, lawless. "What about alliances?" Saraphina asked. The female, her name was Mara, shook her head. "Packs don't ally, they tolerate each other. Barely." "Has that always been true?" "For as long as I've been alive, why?" Saraphina didn't answer, just filed the information away. When she handed them the bread, all 3 wolves tore into it like they were starving, which they probably were. She watched them eat, watched the way their eyes widened, the way their wolves surfaced, drawn by whatever was in the bread. "This is—" Mara stopped, stared at Saraphina. "What is this?" "Bread." "This isn't normal bread." "I know." The larger male, Cole, looked at her with new wariness. "Who are you?" "Nobody," Saraphina said. "Just someone who knows how to bake." She left before they could ask more questions. But as she climbed back up the mountain, she felt it. The shift. 3 wolves now knew about her bread. 3 wolves who would talk. Who would tell others. Word was going to spread. And when it did, everything was going to change. Kyle showed up that evening with blood on his hands. Saraphina smelled it before she saw him, copper and violence. She grabbed her knife and positioned herself at the cave entrance. "It's me," Kyle called. He sounded tired. "Don't stab me." He shifted to human as he entered. There was a gash across his ribs, deep and still bleeding. "What happened?" Saraphina demanded. "Rogues. 6 of them. Caught my scent near the border and decided to test if I was really alpha or just smelled like one. And?" Kyle smiled grimly. "They learned." Saraphina should have told him to leave, should have maintained the boundaries they'd barely established. Instead, she said, "Sit down." She cleaned the wound with water from the spring. It was bad, deep enough to need stitches. She didn't have stitches, but she had something else. She pulled a fresh loaf from the cloth near the oven, broke off a piece, handed it to Kyle. "Eat." Kyle looked at the bread, then at her. "I thought, just eat it." He ate. The change was immediate. The wound began to close. Not completely, it would still scar, but the bleeding slowed, then stopped. The torn edges of skin began to knit together. Kyle stared at his ribs. "How—" "I don't know," Saraphina said honestly, "but it works." Kyle looked at her with something like awe. "You're not just baking bread, you're making medicine." "I'm making food. What it does after that isn't up to me." "Saraphina." Kyle caught her wrist, gently. "Do you understand what this means? If word gets out—" "Word's already out." Kyle's expression went very still. "What?" "I went down to the valley today. Traded bread to 3 rogues for information." "You did what?" "You heard me." Kyle stood, towered over her. "Are you insane? Do you have any idea what you just did?" "I made a choice. My choice." "You painted a target on your back." I've had a target on my back since I was exiled. This doesn't change anything. It changes everything. Kyle's voice was rising now. Those rogues will tell others. Those others will come looking, and they won't ask nicely. They'll take you, your bread, your oven. Let them try. Kyle grabbed her shoulders. Not hard, but firm enough that she couldn't pull away. Listen to me, he said. His voice was low, intense. You're not invincible. You're not safe. And I can't protect you if you keep doing reckless. I never asked you to protect me. I know, but I'm going to anyway. Why? Kyle's hands tightened on her shoulders. Because you're mine. The words hung between them like lightning. Saraphina's wolf surged, fought against it, wanted it. I'm not yours, she said. Her voice was shaking. I'm not anyone's. You're my mate. Stop saying that. Why? Because it scares you? Because it's not true. Kyle pulled her closer, close enough that she could feel his heartbeat. Look me in the eye and tell me you don't feel it. Tell me your wolf isn't screaming right now. Tell me you don't wake up thinking about me the same way I wake up thinking about you. Saraphina couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Because he was right. Her wolf was screaming, had been screaming since the moment Kyle first walked into this cave. The words died. Kyle's expression softened. I'm not trying to claim you, I'm not trying to force anything, but I need you to understand what's happening here. This bond? It's real, and it's not going away. What if I don't want it? Saraphina whispered. Then I'll walk away, right now, and I won't come back. You're lying, Kyle smiled sadly. Yeah? I am. He let her go, stepped back. I can't stay away from you, he said. I've tried. For 3 weeks I've tried to tell myself this is just about the bread, just about curiosity, but it's not. It's you. It's always been you. Saraphina's throat was tight. Kyle, you don't have to say anything, not yet, but think about it. Because when those wolves come, and they will come, you're going to need someone standing beside you. I can stand alone. I know you can, but you don't have to. He shifted and left before she could respond. Saraphina stood in the empty cave and felt the world tilting beneath her feet. Everything was changing, too fast, too much, and the worst part? She wasn't sure she wanted it to stop. Bam! They came 4 days later. Saraphina was pulling bread from the oven when she heard the voices. Multiple voices. Rough. Male. Getting closer. She grabbed her knife and moved to the entrance. 7 wolves emerged from the tree line, all shifted to human, all watching her with eyes that said they weren't here to trade. The leader was a massive brute with a shaved head and a scar that ran from his left eye to his jaw. He smiled when he saw her. Well, well, he said. The Moonbaker, in the flesh. Saraphina's grip tightened on the knife. What do you want? You know what we want, girl. We can smell it from here. That bread. It's not for sale, the man laughed. Who said anything about buying? The others spread out, flanking, surrounding. Saraphina's wolf was screaming, 7 against 1. She couldn't fight 7, couldn't even fight 1 probably, but she could bluff. You take 1 step into this cave, she said quietly, and you'll regret it. Oh yeah, why's that? Because it's protected. The man's smile widened. By who? You? By me. The voice came from behind the rogues. They spun. Kyle stood at the tree line, still in human form, unarmed, but the power rolling off him was palpable. The scarred man's smile faltered. Draven. Marcus. Kyle's voice was flat. Didn't expect to see you this far north. Could say the same about you. I'm visiting a friend. Marcus looked at Saraphina, then back at Kyle. This Omega? She's your friend? She is. Funny. Heard she was exiled from Ironclaw. Heard she's got no pack, no protection. You heard wrong. Marcus took a step forward. You claiming her? Silence. Saraphina's heart stopped. Kyle's eyes found hers. Held. Yes, he said quietly. I am. The world exploded. Marcus lunged. The other rogues followed, but they weren't fast enough. Kyle shifted mid-leap. The massive black wolf hit Marcus with the force of an avalanche. They went down in a tangle of fur and fangs. The others scattered. 2 ran. 3 shifted and circled. Seraphina should have stayed in the cave, should have hidden. Instead, she shifted. Her wolf was small, weak, but fury made it fast. She hit the nearest rogue from the side, teeth finding his throat. Hot blood filled her mouth. He screamed, shifted back to human, clutching his neck. Another rogue grabbed her by the scruff, threw her against a tree. Pain exploded through her spine. She yelped, tried to stand. Kyle was there. He tore the rogue off her with a snarl that shook the ground, ripped into him with claws and teeth until the rogue went limp. The remaining 2 ran. Kyle let them. He shifted back to human, bleeding from a dozen wounds, breathing hard. "Are you—" He stopped, looked at Saraphina. "Did they hurt you?" Saraphina shifted back. Her spine was screaming. Her ribs felt cracked, but she was alive. "I'm fine," she said. Kyle crossed to her in 3 strides, pulled her against his chest. She could feel his heart pounding. "Don't ever do that again," he said into her hair. "Do what?" "Fight when you don't have to. They were going to kill you. I'm Alpha. I can handle myself." "So can I." Kyle pulled back, looked at her. And despite everything, the blood, the pain, the chaos, he smiled. "Yeah," he said, "you can." Then he kissed her. It wasn't gentle, wasn't soft. It was teeth and heat and desperation. It tasted like blood and victory and something deeper. Seraphina kissed him back. Her wolf sang. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kyle rested his forehead against hers. "You're mine," he said. "Say it. Kyle, say it." Seraphina closed her eyes, felt the bond snap into place, real, undeniable. "I'm yours," she whispered. Kyle's arms tightened around her. "And I'm yours," he said. The words were a vow, a promise, a declaration of war. Because claiming an exiled Omega, claiming her in rogue territory, that was going to bring consequences neither of them were ready for. In the valley below, a runner was already sprinting toward Ironclaw territory, already carrying the news. Alpha Garrick Thorne would hear by nightfall, and when he did, he would come for what he believed was his, the Omega he'd thrown away. The Omega who was now claimed by the most powerful Alpha in the South, the Omega who held power in her hands and didn't even know it yet. Seraphina looked up at Kyle, saw the future written in his eyes. "This is going to get bad, isn't it?" she said. Kyle's smile was grim. "Worse than bad." "How bad?" He didn't answer right away, just looked down the mountain toward the valley, toward the territories beyond. "War bad," he finally said. Seraphina's stomach dropped. "Then we'd better—" The howl cut through the air, long, furious, unmistakable, Ironclaw. Garrick had heard, and he was. The howl echoed across the valley like a death sentence. Seraphina's blood turned to ice. She knew that sound, had heard it every morning for 15 years during pack assemblies. Alpha Garrick Thorne calling his wolves to war. Kyle's hand tightened on her arm. "Get inside, now." "He's coming here?" "He's already coming." That howl was from the ridge, 3 miles, maybe less. Seraphina's mind raced. 3 miles. In wolf form, Garrick could cover that in 15 minutes, and he wouldn't be alone. He'd bring enforcers, warriors, the strongest wolves in Ironclaw. "How many?" she asked. Kyle's jaw was tight. "Enough." They moved fast. Kyle dragged the 2 dead rogues into the trees. No point leaving evidence at the cave entrance. Seraphina grabbed her father's pack, threw in the remaining bread, the knife, flint, and steel. Survival instinct kicking in like muscle memory. "You need to run," Kyle said. He was gathering stones, building a barrier at the cave mouth. "Head east. There's a river 5 miles out. Follow it south until—" "I'm not running." Kyle stopped, looked at her. "Seraphina, I said I'm not running. This is my cave, my ground. If Garrick wants me, he can come get me himself." "He will kill you." "Then he kills me." Kyle crossed to her in 2 strides, grabbed her shoulders. "Listen to me. This isn't about pride. This isn't about proving something. Garrick exiled you because he wanted you gone. But now you're claimed by another Alpha. That's a direct challenge to his authority. He can't let that stand." So what? I'm supposed to hide? Let you fight my battles? I'm supposed to protect my mate. The word hit her like a slap. Mate. He'd said it so casually, like it was fact, like the bond between them was already set in stone. Maybe it was. I won't run, Saraphina said quietly. Not from him. Not anymore. Kyle stared at her. Then his expression shifted, resignation mixed with something that looked like pride. Stubborn, he muttered. You knew that already. Yeah, I did. He released her, turned toward the cave entrance. Then we make our stand here, together. Seraphina's wolf surged with approval. This was right. This was how it should be. They had maybe 10 minutes. Kyle positioned himself at the entrance, still human, but his wolf was right beneath the surface. Ready. Seraphina stood behind him, knife in hand. It felt pathetic compared to what was coming, but it was something. The howls grew closer. Multiple voices now, a hunting pack closing in. Then silence. Total, suffocating. Seraphina could hear her own heartbeat, could hear Kyle's breathing, steady and controlled. Then footsteps, crunching through snow. A voice called out, Kyle Draven, show yourself. Garrick. Kyle stepped out of the cave. Seraphina moved to follow, but he threw out an arm, blocking her. Stay behind me, he said quietly. Kyle, please. The word stopped her. Kyle didn't say please, didn't ask. He commanded, but right now he was asking. Seraphina stayed. Through the cave entrance she could see them. Garrick Thorne stood 50 feet away, flanked by 8 wolves. Marcus was there. Lydia Crow. Others Seraphina recognized from Ironclaw. All of them shifted to human now, all of them watching Kyle with eyes that promised violence. Garrick looked exactly the same, 60 years old and carved from stone. Gray hair cropped short, face weathered by decades of leadership. He wore a heavy fur coat and boots that had seen 1,000 miles of mountain terrain. His eyes found Seraphina through the gap. Something flickered in his expression. Anger, contempt, and something else she couldn't identify. Seraphina Vale, Garrick said, his voice carried like a whip. Step forward. Kyle didn't move. She's under my protection. Your protection? Garrick's smile was cold. Interesting. Last I checked, she was exiled from my pack. That makes her rogue. And rogues have no protection. She's claimed. The words dropped like stones. Marcus laughed. You claimed an Omega? Draven, have you lost your mind? Kyle's expression was flat. My claim is recognized. The bond is sealed, which means she's Draven now, not Ironclaw. Garrick's eyes went hard. You don't get to make that decision. I just did. She's a thief, a liar. Omega trash that I threw out for good reason. Seraphina's hands clenched. She wanted to scream, wanted to tear that smug expression off Garrick's face. But she stayed silent, stayed behind Kyle. For now. Garrick took a step forward. I'm not here to negotiate, Draven. I'm here to reclaim what's mine. She's not yours. You exiled her. You have no claim. I have every claim. She was born Ironclaw. She carries Ironclaw blood. And more importantly, Garrick's smile widened. She has something that belongs to my pack. Kyle went very still. What are you talking about? The bread. The impossible bread that heals wounds and makes wolves stronger. You think I don't have spies? You think I don't hear things? That bread is made with Ironclaw knowledge, Ironclaw resources, which means it belongs to me. Seraphina's stomach dropped. No. Kyle glanced back at her. She saw the question in his eyes. Is that true? She couldn't answer, couldn't breathe. Because part of it was true. Her mother had been Ironclaw, had baked for the pack. And if the ability was inherited, if it ran in bloodlines, Garrick saw her expression and laughed. She knows. Look at her face. She knows exactly what I'm talking about. Even if that's true, Kyle said slowly, it doesn't give you the right to take her. It gives me every right. She's a resource, a valuable one, and I don't leave resources in enemy hands. I'm not your enemy. You are now. The air went electric. Wolves on both sides tensed. Seraphina could feel the violence building like pressure before a storm. Kyle's voice dropped. Walk away, Garrick, while you still can. Or what? You'll fight me? You and what army? Garrick gestured to his wolves. I brought 8. You're alone. The math isn't in your favor. I don't need an army to deal with you. Garrick's smile vanished. Careful, boy. You're half my age and you think that makes you stronger, but I've been alpha for 37 years. I've killed 12 challengers. What makes you think you'd be different? Because I have something you don't. What's that? Kyle's eyes flashed gold. Something worth fighting for. He moved. Faster than Saraphina had ever seen him move. 1 second, he was standing at the cave entrance. The next, he was on Garrick, shifted mid-leap, massive black wolf slamming into the older alpha with the force of an avalanche. They went down in a tangle of fur and fangs. The iron-claw wolves surged forward, and then everything went to hell. Marcus shifted first, launching himself at Kyle's exposed flank. But Kyle was ready. He twisted, caught Marcus by the throat, and threw him into a tree hard enough to crack bark. 2 more wolves came from the left. Kyle met them head-on, claws tearing through fur and flesh. But there were too many. 8 against 1. Even an alpha couldn't win those odds. Saraphina watched Kyle go down under the weight of 3 wolves, and something inside her snapped. She shifted. Her wolf was small, pathetic, but it was fast. She hit the nearest wolf from behind, teeth sinking into his hind leg. He yelped, spun, threw her off. She hit the ground hard, rolled, came up already moving. Another wolf, Lydia, lean and vicious, lunged for her throat. Saraphina dodged, barely, felt claws rake across her shoulder, hot pain blooming. She scrambled back toward the cave. Lydia followed. Stupid girl, Lydia snarled. Her voice was distorted by the partial shift. Did you really think you could fight us? Saraphina didn't answer, just kept backing toward the cave entrance. Lydia smiled. I planted that evidence, you know, the food under your mattress. Garrick wanted you gone and I made it happen. It was so easy. You trusted everyone, never even looked. The words hit like bullets. Saraphina's world tilted. Why? She whispered. Because you were a threat. Even then, even as pathetic as you were. Your mother's bloodline runs strong, too strong, and Garrick couldn't risk it. Risk what? Lydia's smile widened. You really don't know, do you? Know what? What you are. What you could become. Before Saraphina could respond, Lydia lunged. Saraphina shifted back to human, grabbed the knife she'd dropped, swung. The blade caught Lydia across the muzzle. Not deep, but enough. Lydia yelped, staggered back. Saraphina pressed the advantage, drove forward with the knife. But Lydia was faster, stronger. She caught Saraphina's wrist, twisted until bones ground together. The knife fell. Nice try, Lydia hissed. Then Marcus was there, shifted to human, bleeding from a dozen wounds but still standing. He grabbed Saraphina by the hair, yanked her head back. Enough, he said. Out in the clearing, Kyle was pinned, 4 wolves holding him down, blood everywhere. His or theirs, Saraphina couldn't tell. Garrick shifted back to human. He was bleeding too, deep gashes across his chest and arms, but he was standing. He walked to where Kyle was pinned and looked down. You fought well, Garrick said. I'll give you that. But you lost. Kyle snarled. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Garrick turned to Marcus. Bring the girl. Marcus dragged Saraphina forward. She fought, twisted, tried to break free. It was useless. He was too strong. Garrick looked at her with those cold, flat eyes. Saraphina Vale, he said, you are hereby reclaimed as property of Ironclaw Pack. You will return with us. You will resume your duties. And you will bake. Go to hell, Saraphina spat. Garrick backhanded her. The world exploded in stars. She tasted blood. Kyle roared. The wolves holding him struggled to keep him down. Touch her again, Kyle snarled, and I'll rip your throat out. Garrick smiled. You're in no position to make threats, Draven, but I'll make you a deal. Let her go willingly, accept that she's mine, and I'll let you walk away. No war, no bloodshed, just walk away. Never. Then watch. Garrick grabbed Saraphina's face, forced her to look at him. Your mother was special, he said quietly. Did you know that? Luna Vale, moon bloodline. Her bread could heal anything. Make wolves stronger than they had any right to be. She was the most valuable wolf in my pack. Seraphina's heart was pounding. What are you saying? I'm saying you're just like her, the same blood, the same power, and I'm not making the same mistake twice. What mistake? Garrick's expression was unreadable. Letting her leave. The words hung in the air. Seraphina's mind was racing. You let my mother leave? I had to. She chose your father, Omega trash, just like you. I couldn't stop the bond, but I could make sure it didn't last. Ice flooded Seraphina's veins. What did you do? What I had to do. Your father died in a border skirmish. That's what we told everyone. But the truth? Garrick leaned close. I sent him there. Made sure he wouldn't come back. No. You killed my father. I removed an obstacle, and when your mother died giving birth to you, I thought the bloodline was done. Finished. But then you started showing signs. Little things. Food that tasted better than it should. Wolves healing faster after eating your cooking. I knew what you were becoming. Seraphina couldn't breathe, couldn't think. So you exiled me. I tried, but you survived, and worse, you thrived. Built your little cave, your little oven, started making bread that could change everything. Garrick's grip tightened on her face. So now I'm fixing my mistake. You're coming back, and this time you'll do exactly what I tell you, or everyone you care about dies. He released her, nodded to Marcus. Take her! Marcus grabbed her arms, started dragging her toward the trees. Kyle was screaming, fighting against the wolves holding him with everything he had. Seraphina looked back, met his eyes, and saw something there that broke her heart. Helplessness. Kyle Draven, the most powerful alpha in the South, was helpless because of her. Seraphina stopped fighting, went limp in Marcus's grip. Wait, she said. Garrick paused. What? Let him go. Let Kyle go and I'll come willingly. I'll bake. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't hurt him. Kyle's eyes went wide. Seraphina, no. Please, she said. Her voice broke. Please don't hurt him. Garrick studied her. Then he smiled. How sweet. The Omega bargaining for her mate. He looked at Kyle. You hear that, Draven? She's choosing me over you. She's choosing survival, Kyle snarled, and you're a coward for using it against her. I'm a realist, and reality is this. She's mine now. The bond you think you have, it's not real, can't be real. Omega and Alpha don't bond, not truly. So whatever you felt, it's over. He gestured to the wolves holding Kyle. Let him go. They released him. Kyle surged to his feet, shifted back to human. Blood was streaming from a dozen wounds, but his eyes were locked on Seraphina. Don't do this, he said quietly. Please, don't go with him. I have to. You don't. We can fight. He'll kill you. He'll kill everyone. I can't. Her voice cracked. I can't let that happen. Kyle took a step toward her. 5 Ironclaw wolves moved to intercept. Kyle stopped. The look on his face was pure agony. Seraphina, I'm sorry, she whispered. Then Marcus dragged her into the trees, and the mountain swallowed them whole. They walked for 3 hours. Seraphina's hands were bound behind her back with rope that cut into her wrists. Marcus kept one hand on her arm the entire time, gripped like iron. The other Ironclaw wolves flanked them, silent, watchful. Garrick led the way. No one spoke. Seraphina's mind was numb, empty. Everything that had just happened felt surreal, like a nightmare she couldn't wake from. Her father. Garrick had killed her father. The exile. It had been planned, orchestrated. And Kyle. She'd left Kyle bleeding in the snow. Her wolf was whimpering, keening for its mate. Seraphina shut it down, locked it away. If she let herself feel right now, she'd shatter. They reached Ironclaw territory as the sun was setting. The pack house looked exactly the same, stone and timber, sprawling across a cleared section of forest. Smoke rising from multiple chimneys, wolves moving in and out, going about their evening routines. They all stopped when they saw Garrick, when they saw Seraphina. Whispers spread like wildfire. Garrick led her straight to the pack house, through the main hall where wolves gathered for meals and meetings. Up the stairs to the second floor, down a hallway she'd cleaned 1,000 times, to a room at the very end. He unlocked the door, shoved her inside. The room was small, maybe 8 by 10, a narrow bed, a single window with bars, no other furniture, a cell. "You'll stay here," Garrick said, "until I decide otherwise." Saraphina turned to face him. "For how long?" "As long as it takes." "Takes for what?" Garrick's expression was unreadable. "For you to understand your place, your purpose. You're not a wolf anymore, Saraphina. You're a tool, and tools don't get freedom." He stepped out. The door slammed shut, the lock clicked. Saraphina stood in the silence and felt the walls closing in. She'd traded one cage for another, but this cage had no oven, no fire, no bread. This cage had nothing. She sank onto the bed and stared at the barred window. Outside, she could hear the pack moving, living, laughing. And somewhere, 70 miles south, Kyle was alive. That was enough. It had to be enough. Matun. 3 days passed. No one came except Lydia, who brought food twice a day. Thin soup, stale bread, water. Saraphina ate because she had to, because survival meant staying alive. But her wolf was dying. She could feel it. The mate bond, real, undeniable, was screaming. Kyle was too far away. The distance was like acid in her veins. On the 4th day, Garrick came. He stood in the doorway and looked at her with those cold eyes. "You look like hell," he said. Saraphina didn't respond. "The bond is killing you. I can see it. Mate separation. It'll get worse before it gets better." "Then let me go." "No." "Why? You have me. You win. What more do you want?" Garrick was quiet for a long moment. Then he stepped inside, closed the door behind him. "I want you to understand something," he said. "Your mother, Luna, I loved her." Saraphina's head snapped up. "I loved her," Garrick repeated. "For 15 years I loved her, but she chose your father. Weak, pathetic Omega. Chose him over me, over the pack. And when she died, I swore I'd never let that happen again." "So you killed him." "I protected the pack. Your mother's ability? It kept us strong, kept us alive through winters that would have destroyed us. When she died, we lost that. I couldn't lose it again. So you're going to force me." "I'm going to give you a choice. A real choice this time." Garrick crouched down to her level. "Bake for Ironclaw. Use your ability to make us the strongest pack in the territory. In exchange, I'll let Kyle live. I won't go after him. Won't challenge Draven. He gets to walk away." Saraphina's throat was tight. "And if I refuse? Then I declare war. 30 wolves against his 20 will tear through Draven territory in a week. And when I find Kyle, I'll make sure his death takes days." The room tilted. This was the choice. The real choice. Bake, submit, become the tool Garrick wanted, or watch Kyle die. "How do I know you'll keep your word?" Saraphina asked quietly. "You don't. But what choice do you have?" None. She had no choice. Saraphina looked at the floor, at her hands, at the bars on the window. "I need supplies," she said. "Flour, yeast, salt, a proper oven." Garrick smiled. "Done. And I work alone. No supervision, no watchers." "Agreed. And when the bread is made, it goes where I say it goes. I distribute it, not you." Garrick's smile faded. "Don't push your luck, girl. Those are my terms. Take them or leave them." For a long moment, Garrick said nothing, just studied her with those calculating eyes. Then he stood. "Fine. You distribute. But if I find out you're using it against me, if I find out you're feeding rogues or rival packs, the deal is off. And Kyle dies. Understand?" "I understand." Garrick nodded, unlocked the door. "You start tomorrow. The kitchen is yours. Make it count." He left. Saraphina sat in the silence and felt the last piece of her freedom die. She'd made her choice. Now she had to live with it. The kitchen was exactly as she remembered. Large, industrial. Stone ovens built into the walls. Counters worn smooth from decades of use. Shelves stocked with flour, salt, dried herbs. everything she needed, and nothing she wanted. Seraphina stood in the center of the room and felt the weight of it all pressing down. This was where her mother had worked, where she'd baked bread that kept the pack alive. Now Seraphina would do the same, but not by choice, never by choice. She started mixing dough. Her hands moved automatically, muscle memory taking over. Flour, water, salt, yeast. The ratios her father had taught her, the techniques her mother had passed down through blood and bone. The dough came together smooth and elastic. She shaped it into loaves, set them to rise. And while they rose, she stared out the window at the pack grounds below. Wolves training, sparring, living, free. She wasn't free, would never be free again. But Kyle was alive. And as long as he was alive, she could survive this. She had to. The bread baked, the smell filled the kitchen, warm, rich, perfect. When she pulled the loaves out, they were golden, beautiful. She broke off a piece, tasted it. Her wolf surged. The power was still there, still amplifying, still impossible. But it felt wrong now, tainted. This wasn't creation. This was captivity. Seraphina wrapped the loaves in cloth and carried them to the main hall where the pack was gathering for dinner. Garrick stood at the head of the table. He smiled when he saw her. There she is, our moon baker. The pack went silent, all eyes on her. Seraphina set the bread on the table. Eat, she said flatly. They descended on it like wolves on prey, tearing into the loaves, devouring them. And as they ate, Seraphina watched their expressions change, watched their wolves surface, watched them grow stronger right before her eyes. Garrick took a piece, ate it slowly. His eyes never left hers. Perfect, he said. Just like your mother's. Seraphina said nothing. Garrick stood, raised his voice so the entire pack could hear. This is our future. With Seraphina's bread, we'll become unstoppable. No pack will challenge us. No rival will stand against us. We are Ironclaw, and we are strong. The pack howled their approval. Seraphina stood at the edge of the room and felt nothing. Absolutely nothing. Later, back in her cell, she lay on the narrow bed and stared at the ceiling. The mate bond was still screaming. Kyle was too far. The distance was agony. But there was something else now, something growing in the space where her hope used to be. Rage, cold, focused, patient. Garrick thought he'd won, thought he'd broken her. He was wrong, because Seraphina had learned something in that cave on the mountain. She'd learned that she didn't need a pack to survive. She didn't need permission to be powerful. And she sure as hell didn't need Garrick Thorne. What she needed was time. Time to plan. Time to prepare. Time to figure out how to burn Ironclaw to the ground from the inside out. The bread was her weapon, and Garrick had just given her full access to. 6 weeks. Seraphina had been baking for Ironclaw for 6 weeks. Every morning she woke in her cell. Every morning Lydia unlocked the door and escorted her to the kitchen. Every morning she mixed flour and water and salt and made bread that kept Garrick's wolves stronger than they had any right to be. And every night she went back to her cell and plotted. The mate bond was a constant ache in her chest. Kyle was alive. She could feel that much through the connection. But he was far away. Too far. The separation was killing her slowly, cell by cell. But she used the pain, let it fuel her rage, let it sharpen her focus. Because Garrick had made one critical mistake. He'd given her access to the kitchen. Full access. No supervision. And he had no idea what she was really baking. The morning of the 43rd day, Seraphina was kneading dough when she heard it. Voices. Angry voices. Coming from the main hall. She wiped her hands on her apron and moved to the doorway. Stayed in the shadows where she could listen without being seen. Garrick stood in the center of the hall. Around him, a dozen pack members argued loudly. Can't keep doing this. The patrols are stretched too thin. We need those border expansions. Nightfang is getting too close. Nightfang wouldn't be a problem if we hadn't started this territorial push in the first place. Enough! Garrick's voice cracked like a whip. Silence fell. We expand because we're strong enough to expand. Thanks to the bread, we're stronger than we've been in a decade. Nightfang knows it. Silvercrest knows it. They're all watching, waiting for us to show weakness. We won't. But Alpha, the scouts report movement to the south. Draven wolves. They've been seen near the border. Chebwai. Ye assess. Seraphina's heart stopped. Kyle. How many? Garrick asked. His voice was deadly calm. Unknown, at least a dozen, maybe more. Garrick was quiet for a moment, then he smiled. Let them come. If Draven wants war, we'll give it to him. Sir, with respect, Draven Pack is 20 strong, well trained. If they coordinate with Nightfang or Silvercrest, they won't. I've made sure of that. Garrick's smile widened. I've sent word to the other packs, told them about our Moonbaker, told them what the bread can do, and I've offered them a trade. Alliance with Ironclaw in exchange for access to the bread. The room erupted. You're sharing the bread? With rival packs? That's insane. That's strategy. Garrick's voice cut through the chaos. Draven is isolated. No allies. No support. If he comes for us, he comes alone. And when he does, we'll crush him. Saraphina's blood turned to ice. This was the endgame. Garrick was using her bread to build an empire. And Kyle was walking straight into a trap. She had to warn him. But how? She was locked in every night, watched constantly. Lydia accompanied her everywhere except the kitchen itself. There was no way to get a message out. Unless Saraphina's mind raced. The bread. The wolves who ate it. They came from other packs now, traitors, scouts, wolves Garrick was building alliances with. If she could mark the bread somehow, if she could send a message that only Kyle would understand, it was insane, impossible. But it was the only chance she had. That night, alone in the kitchen, Saraphina baked. She made 12 loaves, perfect, golden, exactly like all the others. But in the dough for the 13th loaf, she mixed something different, herbs, specific herbs her father had taught her, combinations that meant things in the old wolf language, combinations that Kyle would recognize if he knew what to look for. She shaped the loaf carefully, carved a small mark into the crust before baking, a crescent moon, her mother's symbol. When it came out of the oven, it looked identical to the others. But the scent was different, subtly different. Under the warm bread smell was something sharper. Mint, sage, elderflower, the scent of warning. Saraphina wrapped it separately, marked the cloth with a tiny dot of ash in the corner. Then she waited. The traders came at dawn. 3 wolves from Silvercrest. They'd been coming weekly for the past month, taking bread back to their alpha in exchange for border agreements. Garrick met them in the courtyard. Saraphina watched from the kitchen window as he handed over the wrapped loaves. All except one. The 13th loaf sat on the counter behind her. She waited until Garrick was distracted, until the traders were heading back toward the gates. Then she grabbed the loaf and ran. She caught them just outside the gates. Wait! The Silvercrest wolves turned. The lead wolf, a lean female with silver-streaked hair, narrowed her eyes. What? Saraphina thrust the wrapped loaf toward her. One more. For your alpha. Tell him it's special. Tell him to share it with his strongest warrior. The female took it slowly, studied Saraphina's face. Why? Because I'm asking, please. The female glanced at her companions, then back at Saraphina. You're the Moonbaker. Yes. The one who makes the impossible bread. Yes. And you're giving this to us for free? Saraphina met her eyes. I'm giving it to you because I need you to deliver it, not to your alpha, to someone else. The female's expression sharpened. Who? Kyle Draven. Silence. The Silvercrest wolves exchanged looks. That's treason, the female said quietly. If Garrick finds out, he won't, not if you don't tell him. Why would we help you? Saraphina's hands were shaking. Because Kyle Draven is planning something that's going to get him killed, and I need him to know it's a trap. I need him to stay away. The female studied her for a long moment. Then she looked at the wrapped loaf. What's in it? She asked. A message. What kind of message? The kind only he'll understand. The female was quiet. Then she tucked the loaf into her pack. I'll deliver it. But if this comes back on us, it won't, I swear. The Silvercrest wolves left. Saraphina stood at the gate and watched them disappear into the trees. It was done. Now she just had to pray Kyle understood. Brag. He understood. 4 days later, Saraphina was in the kitchen when she felt it. The bond. Flaring to life like a struck match. Kyle was close. Very close. Her hands froze in the dough. Her wolf surged, desperate and joyful and terrified all at once. No. He couldn't be here. He was supposed to stay away. The bread was supposed to warn him. The alarm bell rang. Seraphina dropped everything and ran to the window. Wolves were pouring out of the pack house, shifting, forming defensive lines. And at the tree line, she saw him. Kyle Draven. Massive black wolf. Gold eyes burning. But he wasn't alone. Behind him stood at least 15 wolves. Draven wolves. All shifted, all ready for war. Garrick appeared on the pack house steps, still human, smiling. "Kyle Draven," he called. His voice carried across the courtyard. "You're trespassing." Kyle shifted to human. "I'm here for my mate. Your mate is Ironclaw property now. You have no claim." "I have every claim. The bond is real. Recognized. And you're holding her against her will." Garrick's smile widened. "She came willingly. Ask her yourself." He gestured toward the pack house. 2 wolves emerged, dragging Seraphina between them. "No." She fought against their grip, but they were too strong. They forced her down the steps, across the courtyard, until she stood 20 feet from Kyle. His eyes met hers. The bond screamed. "Seraphina," Kyle said. His voice was rough. "Are you here willingly?" She wanted to scream no, wanted to run to him, wanted to tear Garrick apart with her bare hands. But Garrick was watching, waiting. If she said no, Kyle would fight, and Garrick had 30 wolves ready. Kyle would die. "Yes," Seraphina said. The word tasted like ash. "I'm here willingly." Kyle's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes dimmed. "You're lying," he said quietly. "I'm not." "Look at me and say it again." Seraphina forced herself to meet his eyes, forced the words out. "I'm here willingly. I chose this. I chose Ironclaw." "Then why did you send me a warning?" Garrick's head snapped toward her. "What?" Kyle pulled something from his pocket. The wrapped loaf, the 13th loaf. "She baked this, marked it, sent it through Silvercrest traders with instructions to deliver it to me. The herbs inside spell out a message in the old language. Stay away. It's a trap." Seraphina's stomach dropped. Garrick rounded on her. "You did what?" His fist caught her across the jaw. She went down hard, tasted blood. Kyle roared. The Draven wolves surged forward. Garrick's wolves met them, and the world exploded into violence. Seraphina scrambled back as wolves clashed around her, fur and fangs and blood. The sound was deafening, snarls and screams and the wet crunch of bone. She had to stop this, had to. A hand grabbed her hair, yanked her to her feet. Marcus, still human, bleeding from a gash across his forehead. "You stupid bitch," he snarled. "You just started a war." "Let me go." He dragged her toward the pack house, away from the fighting, away from Kyle. Seraphina twisted, drove her elbow into his ribs, felt something crack. Marcus howled, his grip loosened. She tore free, ran, not toward the pack house, toward the fighting, toward Kyle. A wolf lunged at her from the side. Ironclaw. She didn't recognize him. She shifted mid-stride. Her small wolf dodged. Teeth snapped where her throat had been. She kept running. Kyle was in the center of the chaos, 4 wolves on him. He was holding his own, but barely. Blood matted his black fur. Seraphina hit the nearest wolf from behind. Her teeth found his spine, bit down hard. The wolf collapsed. Kyle spun, saw her. "Seraphina." "I'm sorry," she gasped. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry, just run." "I'm not leaving you." A massive gray wolf slammed into Kyle's side. Garrick. Shifted now. Bigger than Seraphina remembered. Older, but still powerful. The 2 alphas went down in a tangle of claws and fury. Seraphina tried to intervene, but another wolf blocked her. Lydia, lean and vicious, they circled each other. "You really thought you could betray us?" Lydia snarled. "Thought you could warn Draven and get away with it?" "I wasn't trying to get away with anything. I was trying to save him." "You failed." Lydia lunged. Seraphina met her head on. They collided in a mess of fur and teeth. Seraphina was smaller, weaker, but she was desperate. She fought like her life depended on it, because it did. Lydia's jaws closed around her shoulder. Pain exploded through her body. She yelped. Then strong jaws clamped onto Lydia's throat. "Kyle." He ripped Lydia off Saraphina and threw her into a tree. She hit with a sickening crack and didn't get up. Kyle shifted to human, bleeding from a dozen wounds. "Can you stand?" Seraphina shifted back. Her shoulder was torn open, blood everywhere. "I think so." "Good, because we need to—" Garrick's voice cut through the chaos. "Enough!" Everyone froze. Garrick stood in the center of the courtyard, human again, covered in blood. In his hand he held a knife, and pressed against his chest, shaking and terrified, was a young wolf. Maybe 13 years old, one of the Omega pups. "Everyone stops fighting," Garrick said calmly. "Right now, or I kill the girl." The knife pressed against the pup's throat. A thin line of blood appeared. Kyle's hands clenched. "Let her go. Drop your challenge. Leave. Never come back." "You know I can't do that." "Then I gut her right here. Right now." The pup was crying, soft, desperate sounds. Seraphina felt something inside her snap. "Garrick," she said. Her voice was steady. "Let her go, please." Garrick looked at her. "Why would I do that?" "Because if you hurt her, I'll never bake for you again. Ever. I'll starve myself to death before I make another loaf." "You're bluffing. Try me." Garrick's eyes narrowed. "You care about this pup?" "I care about all of them. Every Omega you've ever hurt. Every wolf you've crushed under your authority. I care because I was them, and I won't let you do it anymore. Noble. Stupid. But noble." Garrick's smile was cold. "Here's what's going to happen. Kyle leaves. Now. Takes his wolves and goes, and you stay. Continue baking. Continue making Ironclaw strong. In exchange, the pup lives. Everyone lives." "No," Kyle said. "It's not your choice, Draven. It's hers." Garrick looked at Seraphina. "What's it going to be, Moonbaker? Your mate or the pack?" Seraphina's mind was racing. This was it. The final choice. The one that would define everything. Save Kyle and watch innocent wolves die. Or sacrifice herself and keep them safe. The bond was screaming. Kyle was screaming. Her wolf was screaming. But underneath all the noise, she heard her father's voice. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is survive. And sometimes it's making sure others can survive too. Seraphina looked at Kyle. Memorized his face, the gold of his eyes, the way he stood like the world couldn't break him. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Kyle's expression crumbled. "No, Seraphina, no! Leave," she said, louder now. "Take your wolves and leave. I'm staying." "I won't abandon you. You have to. Please, for me. Just go." Tears were streaming down Kyle's face. "I can't. The bond will kill us both if you stay." Seraphina's voice broke. "But at least this way you're alive. At least I know you're out there. Please, Kyle. Please just go." Kyle looked at her for a long moment, then at Garrick, then at the pup with the knife against her throat. And Seraphina saw the exact moment he broke. "This isn't over," Kyle said to Garrick. His voice was hollow, dead. "Yes, it is." Kyle shifted. His massive black wolf stood there for one more heartbeat, eyes locked on Seraphina. Then he turned and walked away. The Draven wolves followed. Seraphina watched them disappear into the trees and felt her heart go with them. Garrick released the pup. She ran. Then he turned to Seraphina. "Smart choice." Seraphina said nothing. "Back to the kitchen. You have bread to make." She walked, one foot in front of the other, past the bodies, past the blood, past the wolves staring at her with expressions ranging from pity to contempt, into the pack house, into the kitchen. She stood at the counter and stared at her hands. They were shaking. Everything was shaking. She'd just sent Kyle away, condemned herself to this life, this cage. For what? For a pup she barely knew? For wolves who'd watched her get exiled and said nothing? Yes, because that's who she was, who she'd always been, someone who cared when no one else did, someone who chose the hard path because it was right, even if it destroyed her. Seraphina took a deep breath, reached for the flour, and started baking. But this time, as her hands worked the dough, her mind worked something else. A plan. Not escape. Not revenge. Something bigger. Something that would change everything. She just needed time. Busha. 3 days later, Garrick called a pack meeting. Everyone gathered in the main hall. Wolves from Ironclaw and the allied packs. Nightfang. Silvercrest. Even a few from Ashwood. Garrick stood at the front, smiling. "We stand at the edge of a new era," he announced. "For too long the packs have been divided, fighting over scraps. But no more. With the Moonbaker's bread we are united, strong, unstoppable." The crowd murmured approval. "And to celebrate this unity," Garrick continued, "I'm hosting a feast. Tomorrow night. Every pack is invited. We'll share the bread, share our strength, and solidify our alliance." Cheers erupted. Saraphina stood at the back of the hall and felt cold settle in her bones. A feast. With every pack present. Garrick was making a statement, showing the world that he'd won, that he controlled the bread, controlled her, that he was untouchable. But he'd made another mistake. He'd given her the perfect opportunity. That night, alone in the kitchen, Saraphina baked. Not 12 loaves, not 20, 50. Enough to feed every wolf at the feast, and into each one she mixed something special. Not poison. She'd never poison anyone. But an herb. One her mother had taught her about through the stories Uncle Thomas told. One that didn't hurt, didn't kill, just made you tell the truth. Absolute, unfiltered truth. Tomorrow night, Garrick would stand before every allied pack, and every wolf who ate the bread would be unable to lie. Saraphina shaped the loaves carefully, precisely. This was her weapon. This was her war. And tomorrow night, the world would see Garrick Thorne for exactly what he was. The feast began at sunset. The main hall had been transformed, tables laden with food, torches burning, wolves from 5 different packs mingling, talking, laughing. At the center of it all sat Garrick, Alpha, Conqueror, Victor. Beside him, a small table held the bread. 50 golden loaves, still warm. Saraphina stood against the wall, watching. Garrick stood, raised his voice. "Before we eat, a toast, to unity, to strength, to the future of all packs united." Glasses raised, voices cheered. "And to the Moonbaker," Garrick continued. He gestured towards Saraphina. "Who makes all of this possible?" Every eye turned to her. Saraphina didn't move, didn't smile, just stared back. Garrick's smile faltered slightly. Then he gestured to the bread. "Eat, enjoy. Tonight we celebrate." The wolves descended on the bread like locusts. Within minutes, every loaf was gone, devoured. Saraphina watched them eat, watched them savor it, watched their wolves surge with the power of it, and waited. The herb took 20 minutes to activate. At minute 15, the first wolf stood, an Ashwood beta. He looked at his alpha and said, "I've been stealing from the pack stores for months, stockpiling, planning to leave." His alpha stared. "What?" "I can't stop it. I can't stop talking. I hate you. I've always hated you. You're weak, and you don't deserve—" The beta's mouth kept moving, but the words were drowned out by chaos. Because all around the hall, wolves were starting to talk. Confessions, secrets, truth spilling out like blood. "Slept with your mate last summer. Planning to challenge you. Took bribes from Nightfang. Killed that pup and blamed it on rogues." The hall descended into chaos. Wolves were screaming, fighting, confessions tearing through the air like shrapnel. Secrets that had been buried for years erupting all at once in a tidal wave of truth that no one could control. An Ironclaw warrior grabbed his brother by the throat. "You told Garrick I was planning to leave. You're why I got demoted." "Because you were weak. You've always been weak." A Nightfang female turned on her alpha. "You knew about the poisoned water supply. You let 12 pups die because you wanted Silvercrest to look incompetent. It was strategy. They were never going to ally with us otherwise. They were children." Fists flew, claws emerged. The feast dissolved into a brawl. And in the center of it all, Garrick Thorne stood frozen. His face had gone white. His hands were shaking. Because his wolves were turning on each other. And worse, they were turning on him. Marcus stumbled forward, blood on his mouth. "I planted the evidence in Saraphina's room. You ordered me to. You wanted her gone because you were afraid of her." Garrick's eyes went wide. "Shut your mouth." I can't stop." Marcus's voice was rising, desperate. "You killed Jonathan Vale. Sent him into Nightfang territory knowing he wouldn't come back. You murdered him because Luna chose him over you. The hall went silent. Every eye turned to Garrick. The Ironclaw Alpha stood there, trapped in the spotlight of his own crimes, and for the first time in 37 years, he had no words. Is it true? The voice belonged to Thomas Vale, Saraphina's uncle. He pushed through the crowd, face twisted with shock and rage. You killed my brother? Garrick's jaw worked. I did what was necessary. He was your beta, your friend. He was in the way. Thomas lunged. Garrick caught him, threw him into a table. Wood splintered. I am Alpha, Garrick roared. His voice cracked. Everything I did was for the pack, for strength, for survival. You did it for power, Saraphina said. Her voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Everyone turned. She stood against the wall, arms crossed, face calm, but her eyes burned. You didn't kill my father for the pack, Saraphina continued. You killed him because my mother loved him instead of you. You didn't exile me for theft. You exiled me because I reminded you of her, of everything you couldn't control, and you didn't build these alliances for unity. You built them so you could rule over everyone. All of it, every decision, every manipulation was about your ego, your weakness, not strength. Garrick stared at her. You did this. The bread, but has truth serum in it? Yes. An herb my mother taught me about, the same mother you tried to erase from pack history. You poisoned us. I freed you. Saraphina's voice was steady. Every wolf in this room has been living under your lies for years. Now they know the truth. Now they can choose what to do with it. Garrick looked around, at the faces staring back at him. Faces that had followed him, trusted him, feared him. Now they just looked disgusted. I am your Alpha, Garrick said. His voice was weaker now, uncertain. You obey me. No one moved. I said you obey me! Thomas stood, blood running from a cut above his eye. No, we don't. Other wolves rose, one by one. Ironclaw, Nightfang, Silvercrest, Ashwood, all of them standing in silent refusal. Garrick's face contorted. You would choose her, an Omega, over me? We choose truth, Thomas said quietly. Something you've never given us. Garrick looked at Saraphina. Really looked, and she saw it in his eyes. The moment he realized he'd lost, not just the pack, not just the alliance, everything. You've destroyed me, he said. No, Saraphina replied. You destroyed yourself. I just made sure everyone could see it. Garrick's hands clenched. For a moment, Saraphina thought he might shift, might attack, might try to take her down with him. Instead, he turned and walked out of the hall. No one stopped him. No one followed. The silence that fell was suffocating. Then Thomas crossed to Saraphina, stopped 3 feet away. I'm sorry. For everything, for not stopping your exile, for not telling you the truth about your parents, for being a coward. Saraphina looked at her uncle, saw the shame in his face, the regret. I know, she said quietly. Can you forgive me? Saraphina was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, not yet, but maybe someday. Thomas nodded. That's more than I deserve. He stepped back. The Nightfang Alpha, a grizzled wolf named Cormac, approached next. What you did tonight, that took guts, or insanity. Both, Saraphina said. Cormac almost smiled. What happens now? That's up to you, all of you. I'm not your alpha. I'm not your leader. I'm just a baker who's tired of watching powerful wolves hurt those who can't fight back. But you can fight back. We just watched you dismantle an alpha without throwing a single punch. I didn't dismantle him. I just held up a mirror. He destroyed himself. Cormac studied her. You know what you've done, right? Garrick's alliance is finished. The packs will fracture. Territory disputes will start again. This valley is going to tear itself apart. Only if you let it. What's the alternative? Saraphina looked around the hall, at the wolves watching her, waiting for her answer. She didn't have one. Or maybe she did. Cooperation instead of conquest, she said. Trade instead of territory. Strength that comes from supporting each other instead of dominating each other. I don't know if it's possible, but it has to be better than this. Cormac was quiet. Then he nodded slowly. I'll consider it, but you should know, Draven's going to hear about this, and when he does, he's coming back. Seraphina's heart clenched. I know. What will you do? I don't know that either. Cormac turned to leave, stopped. For what it's worth, your mother would be proud. He left before Seraphina could respond. The other alphas followed, taking their wolves, disappearing into the night. Within an hour, the hall was empty except for the Ironclaw wolves who remained, about 20 of them, less than half the pack. They looked at Seraphina with expressions ranging from gratitude to uncertainty to fear. What now? Someone asked. Seraphina took a breath. Now you decide. You can rebuild Ironclaw, choose a new alpha, start over, or you can leave. Find other packs, other lives. I won't stop you either way. What about you? Thomas asked. Seraphina looked toward the door, toward the mountains beyond. I'm going back to my cave. Alone? Yes. That's suicide. The rogues will. I survived them before. I'll survive them again. She walked out before anyone could argue. Into the cold night air. Into the snow that was starting to fall. And she didn't look back. The cave looked exactly the same. Seraphina stood at the entrance and felt something in her chest loosen. This place, this small limestone sanctuary, it had saved her life once. Maybe it would save her again. She stepped inside. The oven she'd built was cold, dark, but intact. She started a fire, the familiar ritual calming her shaking hands. Flint and steel, tinder catching, flames growing, light bloomed in the darkness. Seraphina sat beside the fire and finally let herself feel it. Everything she'd been holding back for 6 weeks. The pain, the fear, the grief. The mate bond that was screaming for Kyle. She pulled her knees to her chest and buried her face in her arms, and she cried. Sobbed until her throat was raw. Until her chest ached. Until there was nothing left but emptiness. When she finally lifted her head, dawn was breaking outside, and someone was standing at the cave entrance. Seraphina grabbed her knife, stood. Who's there? The figure stepped into the light. Kyle. Seraphina's breath caught. You came. Of course I came. His voice was rough, exhausted. Did you think I wouldn't? I sent you away, and I left, because you asked me to, but I never stopped watching, never stopped waiting for a chance to get you back. Kyle took a step closer. Word reached me last night about the feast, about what you did to Garrick. I came as soon as I heard. Seraphina couldn't speak, couldn't move. Kyle crossed to her, stopped just out of reach. I'm not going to ask if you're okay. I know you're not, but I need to know if you're here because you want to be or because you don't have anywhere else to go. I'm here because this is where I belong. Alone? I don't know how to be anything else. Kyle's expression softened. Then let me teach you. Seraphina's throat was tight. Kyle, I can't. The bond, it's too much, too intense. I can't be someone's mate, can't be owned or claimed or... I don't want to own you. Kyle's voice was gentle. I never did. I just want to stand beside you, if you'll let me. Why? After everything I've put you through? Because you're the strongest wolf I've ever met. Because you faced down an alpha without weapons. Because you chose to save others even when it cost you everything. And because I love you. The words hung in the air. Seraphina stared at him. You can't. I do. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're stubborn and brilliant and you make bread that defies nature. I know you'd rather die than submit to someone you don't respect. I know your wolf is small, but your heart is bigger than this entire valley. Kyle stepped closer. And I know the bond between us is real. It's not going away. So we can fight it, suffer through the separation, slowly kill ourselves. Or we can accept it, build something together, your terms, your pace. Seraphina's hands were shaking. What if I'm not ready? Then I'll wait. What if I'm never ready? Then I'll still wait, because you're worth waiting for. Seraphina looked at him, really looked, saw the exhaustion in his face, the hope, the love that he wasn't trying to hide, and she felt her walls crumble. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Neither do I. But we'll figure it out together. Kyle held out his hand. Seraphina stared at it, at the choice it represented, at the life it offered. She took it. Kyle pulled her into his arms, held her tight. The mate bond flared to life, warm and right and whole. Seraphina buried her face in his chest and felt something she hadn't felt in months. Safe. "I'm sorry," she said against his shirt, "for sending you away, for making you think I chose Garrick over you. You were protecting people. I understand. But it hurt you. Yes. But you're here now. That's what matters." They stood there for a long time, just holding each other, letting the bond settle, letting the world shrink down to just this moment. Finally, Kyle pulled back. "What happens now?" Seraphina looked around the cave, at the oven, at the small life she'd built. "I don't know. Garrick's gone. Ironclaw's fractured. The valley's going to be chaos for a while. So we build something different." "What?" Kyle gestured to the oven. "You said cooperation instead of conquest, trade instead of territory. What if we actually did it? What if we turned this cave into something more than a hiding place, a meeting ground, a place where wolves from different packs can come, not to fight, but to eat, to talk, to trade?" Seraphina's mind was racing. "You mean like neutral territory?" "Exactly. We provide the bread. They provide goods, information, support. No one owns it. No one controls it. It just exists, a space between the packs." "That's insane." "So is baking bread in a cave. So is taking down an alpha with herbs. You've been doing insane things since the moment I met you." Despite everything, Seraphina laughed. "Fair point. So what do you say? Will you let me help you build this?" Seraphina looked at the oven, at Kyle, at the future that was suddenly, impossibly, unfolding before her. "Yes," she said. Kyle smiled. "Good. Because I brought supplies." He disappeared outside, returned carrying a massive pack, flour, yeast, salt, better tools, blankets, everything they'd need to start. "You were that confident I'd say yes?" Seraphina asked. "I was that hopeful." They worked through the morning. Kyle rebuilt the fire. Seraphina mixed dough, the familiar rhythm grounding them both. When the first loaves came out of the oven, golden and perfect, they sat together and shared the bread. It tasted like home, like possibility, like everything they'd fought for. "What about Garrick?" Seraphina asked. "He's still out there. He could come back." Kyle was quiet for a moment. "Garrick's finished. Even if he wanted to rebuild, no one will follow him, not after what you exposed. He's a broken alpha. That's worse than being dead." "But what if—" "Then we deal with it, together." Kyle took her hand. "You don't have to carry everything alone anymore, Seraphina. That's what this bond means. We share the weight." Seraphina looked at their joined hands, felt the strength there, the promise. "Okay," she said quietly. But word spread fast. Within a week, wolves started arriving. Not to challenge, not to conquer, but to see for themselves. The cave that defied nature, the bread that healed, the Omega who'd brought down an Alpha. Seraphina met them at the entrance, offered bread in exchange for goods, information, stories. Some came from Ironclaw, wolves who'd left after Garrick's fall, who wanted to start over somewhere new. Others came from packs she'd never heard of, drawn by rumor, by hope, by the promise of something different. Kyle stood beside her through all of it, protecting, supporting, never controlling. And slowly, impossibly, the cave became more than a sanctuary. It became a center. Traders came weekly, bringing flour, tools, furs, leaving with bread that made their packs stronger. Scouts came seeking information, leaving with maps and alliances. Even healers came, learning which herbs Seraphina used, how she combined them, what made the bread work. The valley didn't transform overnight. Territory disputes still flared, packs still clashed, but there was a shift. Subtle, but undeniable. Wolves had options now, a place to go that wasn't about dominance or submission, a place that fed them, strengthened them, united them. 3 months after the feast, Thomas arrived. Seraphina was kneading dough when she saw him at the entrance. She almost didn't recognize him. He looked older, thinner, like the truth had hollowed him out. Can I come in? He asked. Seraphina gestured. It's not my cave to refuse. Thomas stepped inside, looked around. You've built something here. We've built something, Seraphina corrected. She nodded toward Kyle, who was organizing supplies in the back. Thomas nodded. I came to tell you something. Garrick's dead. Seraphina's hand stilled. What? He was found 3 days ago, in the northern mountains. Exposure, they think. He'd been wandering for weeks. Alone. No pack. No purpose. Thomas's voice was hollow. He died the way he exiled you. In the cold. With nothing. Seraphina should have felt satisfaction. Vindication. Something. Instead, she just felt tired. I'm sorry, she said. Thomas looked at her. Why? Because despite everything he did, he was still a wolf, still someone's alpha, still a life. You're kinder than he deserved. Maybe, but kindness isn't about what people deserve. It's about who you choose to be. Thomas was quiet for a long time. Then he pulled something from his pack, a small leather journal, worn, old. This was your mother's, he said. She kept notes, recipes, herb combinations, everything she knew about baking, about the moon bloodline. I should have given it to you years ago, but I was afraid. Of what? Of you becoming her, of losing you the way we lost her. Thomas held out the journal. But you already are her, maybe better than she ever was. So this belongs to you. Seraphina took the journal with shaking hands, opened it. Her mother's handwriting, neat, precise, pages and pages of knowledge. Thank you, Seraphina whispered. Thomas nodded, turned to leave. Uncle Thomas? He stopped. You're welcome here. Anytime. If you want. Thomas looked back. Something flickered in his face. Hope, maybe, or forgiveness. I'll remember that, he said. He left. Seraphina stood holding her mother's journal and felt a circle close. The past meeting the present. Pain transforming into something that might, someday, become peace. Kyle crossed to her, wrapped his arms around her from behind. You okay? I will be. That's good enough. They stood there as the sun set outside, as the fire crackled, as the smell of baking bread filled the cave. 6 months later, the valley had transformed. Not completely, not perfectly, but noticeably. The pack still held their territories, still maintained their boundaries, but between them, connections had formed. Trade routes, alliances, agreements brokered not through force, but through mutual benefit. And at the center of it all was the cave. Seraphina's cave, Kyle's cave, their cave. It had grown. Kyle had built an addition, a second chamber with more ovens, a storage room, a small meeting area where alphas could gather without fear of attack. Wolves came daily now, sometimes dozens, bringing goods, taking bread, sharing news. Seraphina baked. Kyle managed logistics. Together they created something that shouldn't have been possible. A space where Omega and Alpha stood as equals, where strength wasn't measured by dominance but by contribution, where the smallest wolf could have the loudest voice. On a cold evening in late autumn, Seraphina stood at the cave entrance and looked down at the valley. Lights flickered in the distance, pack fires, homes, lives being lived. Kyle joined her, slipped his hand into hers. Thinking? He asked. Always. About what? Seraphina smiled. About how I got here. About how that night, when Garrick exiled me, I thought my life was over, thought I was nothing. And now? Now I know I was never nothing. I was just waiting to become something different. Kyle pulled her close. You're everything. Seraphina leaned into him, felt the bond hum between them. Warm, steady, right. So are you, she said. They stood there as night fell. As stars emerged, as the world spun on. Behind them, bread rose in the oven. In front of them, the valley stretched wide and wild and full of possibility. Seraphina had been exiled, discarded, told she was worthless. But she'd survived, built, created. And in doing so, she'd changed everything. Not through conquest, not through force, through bread, through kindness, through the quiet, relentless refusal to let cruelty define her worth. She wasn't an alpha, wasn't a ruler. She was something better. She was a builder, a healer, a force that fed and strengthened and united. And as warm bread rose into the cold mountain air, as wolves gathered from every corner of the valley, as life continued in all its messy, beautiful complexity, Seraphina knew one thing for certain. She had found her place, her purpose, her pack. Not the one she was born into, not the one that exiled her, but the one she chose, the one she built, the one that chose her back. And that was enough, more than enough. It was everything. Kyle squeezed her hand. Ready to go inside? The next batch needs shaping. Seraphina smiled. Yeah, let's go. They turned together and walked back into the warmth, into the light, into the life they'd built from nothing but determination and hope. And outside, the mountain stood silent witness, ancient, unchanging, holding their story in its stone heart. The story of a girl who was thrown away and became a legend. The story of bread that healed more than hunger. The story of love that refused to break even when everything else did. The wolves would tell this story for generations, would whisper about the moonbaker who transformed a valley, who proved that power came not from dominance but from service, not from taking but from giving. And years later, when young wolves asked if it was true, if one Omega really changed everything, the elders would smile and say yes. Yes, it was true. Because some stories are too important to be anything but real, and some wolves are too strong to be anything but remembered. Seraphina Vale was both, and her bread, warm, golden, impossible, would rise forever in the hearts of those who knew what it meant to be discarded and still choose to feed the world.